Well, you know what, Professor? We're looking at a deflated Donald Trump almost about 60 days into the, Iran misadventure, if I could put it that way. Indians are amongst the highest contributors to the U.S. economy. Madam Ambassador, highlighted that point earlier as well. But this birthright citizenship, this entire debate, it seems to be being oversimplified into racial and cultural narratives. What does this mean for the future of, our strategic partnership with the United States? Between data and rhetoric, there's a clear-cut confrontation, there's a contradiction. And does this now reflect deeper anxieties in the global power shift in the face of all that's happened over the last 2.5 months as well?
Absolutely. I think at the core of President Trump's problem is the paranoia that United States is receding the prime position it used to hold once upon a time in global politics. So therefore, in terms of actual statistics, if you look at each of the presidents before him also deporting a good number of immigrants one after another, his numbers are not very different, except that his rhetoric and particularly the kind of language that he brings to the public discourse, that is particularly different, and that comes out of his sense of the fear that every other country is taking advantage of United States. And second, he is clearly focusing here on domestic constituencies, because his popularity ratings, I was last looking at, was about 32%. Even MAGA supporters are deserting him. So this is not directed either on China or on India. It's primarily directed on United States domestic constituencies, knowing fully well also the fact that Supreme Court is already indicating that his January last year's executive order denying that kind of birthright, particularly to undocumented people in United States, and leading to a debate of birth tourism and so on, is not going to stay on. Supreme Court is going to strike it down, and it's going to be almost impossible to achieve a constitutional amendment if he wants to really do it, because that would need 2/3 of United States Congress supporting it, 3/4 of all the states of United States supporting it. So he fully knows that's not something that is going to be possible. But he's definitely raising this rhetoric for domestic constituencies, maybe partly to deflect attention from his desperation to find exit strategy from Iran. So, it's quintessential Trump. I don't think anyone either in China or in India is going to take this seriously, other than the fact that in addition to a good number of other irritants that he's brought into relationship, for example, with India, this could be just one more such irritant, which is not going to substantially change the reality. Reality also is, as Ambassador Meera Shankar mentioned, large number of talent pool now is no longer moving to United States, is finding opportunities in Australia, in Canada, in European countries. So in that sense, we will notice the real effect on the ground is going to be America going to be the loser, because we are saying only the kind of cheap labor of immigrants has fundamentally been behind pushing forward the rise of United States way back from 1960s till today in that sense. So fundamentally Trump is doing nothing but accelerating the relative decline of United States.
Economies, China, India, nobody's worried. You see, it's great to be honest, but having, holding the position of the US president and managing your own social media, I think that's the biggest problem. I think he pushes the repost button himself. Usually you have a brigade of people writing your posts, writing your speeches, but not for the US president, the verbal fireworks like Mr. Leung pointed out. So here's the philosophical one for you, Professor Swaran Singh, whilst we wrap this up. When immigration debates start using languages like hellholes, gangsters with laptops, I don't think he even read the entire document through. He just pushed repost, and those are another one of his truths, or let me rephrase, his irritants to a long list. Are we moving towards a more protectionist? Are we moving towards a more less welcoming world order with each passing day? We're witnessing policy discourse. There is this politicization of an entire identity. Keep the numbers aside, but how does one look at this from a geopolitical context of a less welcoming world order?
Since you said it's going to be a philosophical question, I always say two things are a major threat to humanity: normalization of violence, lumpenization of public discourse. The reality is that one cannot stop importing and exporting, and countries like India with young population has enormous pool of highly talented people. If you notice countries that are now signing trade agreements and arrangements with India, they do have always either a separate agreement or a clause for labor mobility in that sense. Just like we can't just stop importing, let's say, cars because somebody else produces good cars. World cannot stop using Indian highly talented workforce because it is competitive around the world. So in that sense, that is not an option that countries like United States has to stop allowing foreign immigrants to come and contribute to their building up of their nation. If they have to build America great again, it cannot be minus immigrants. So therefore, it is nothing other than rhetorical kind of effort to find a space in his domestic politics, find an exit strategy from the Iran war. Reality is that if United States doesn't understand that, and if a specific president doesn't allow that flow of highly talented workforce from outside and depends purely on their own, the people who are citizens at home, then they are going to be, as I said, only accelerating the relative decline of United States. Otherwise, other countries are beginning to appreciate the fact that India today is a hub of highly talented people, and so is China to a great extent. But China can often use their highly talented people in building their own projects around the world because they are investing in several other countries where they send their workforce. And in that sense, India still depends on importing things and also for that exporting things that India is good at. So philosophically, I think there is no choice for any country to say, I will stop importing a specific thing on which I am deficient and I will only depend on my limited resource at home. That's not a solution, and hopefully President Trump understands this and is using all this kind of rhetorical, language only for different reasons, not for reasons that this actually stands for when he says such things. He also knows it's not possible at all to disallow that kind of citizenship by birth, because of the 35 countries that you mentioned that allow birth citizenship, most of them are in Americas.
Yeah.
So it's surrounded by countries which are all finding that perfectly a norm rather than aberration, and that goes back to immigration from Europeans. And of course, also slaves were allowed population way back after Civil War. So it's a history which tells us that that is something that United States can only ill afford. And I think this lumpenization of language and normalization of violence is something that I think all nations should wake up to. And I think United States is fairly contributing to that kind of deterioration of normalization of violence.
You're absolutely right. Look at the $17 billion Trump class, war machine that Donald Trump has also sanctioned now. You're absolutely right. I think